Hello viewers, Tim Ball here with the Huddle at SBC Lisbon with Charles Lee, CEO of Kwiff. Charles, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. So Kwiff, you got an interesting concept of supercharging bets. Tell us all about the concept, and would you say in the years since kind of founding the company, it's caught on?
Yeah, it's certainly caught on, I'm pleased to say. We see great growth in the UK, in Ireland, our core markets. And we even see our competitors trying to copy us, either with the Supercharging name or even in the product. They can't quite do it. It's native to our product. We build our own technology, so it sits within that. So they can't quite get that same experience that we give to players. But the Supercharging sits throughout everything we do. We look to give players the most entertaining experience. And Supercharging odds, for example, runs from the odds you see in the product aren't necessarily the odds you get. They can be epically increase, and players can get way better value than they get elsewhere.
How random or perhaps not random is the actual supercharging process?
It's pretty random. You don't know when it's going to happen. We don't know when it's going to happen. Of course, I'm not going to give away the secret sauce of how we do it. There's algorithms that sit behind it. There are a lot of things in our platform. But yeah, it's a unique experience that is ingrained throughout everything we do.
In the UK market, what kind of market share are you what are you attaining at the moment? What is your ultimate goal of attaining? And is it fair to kind of describe you kind of as challenging some of the big boys?
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's our aim. That's what we want to do. We're a challenger brand. Despite being around for sort of 10 years, the company was founded in 2015. We started taking customers in 2017. So we've been around for a while, but we've seen enormous growth in the last 2-3 years. So we're definitely in the top 15 of UK operators. We want to grow that and get bigger, and I think we can do that. I think you see a lot of established brands really struggling to grow. They might bundle numbers with Irish market or international. They might delist from the London Stock Exchange and move internationally as well, which slightly hides those numbers. But yeah, we want to keep growing, and we see we can use our tech and leverage that to do so, and keep getting to that top 10. That would be nice, but we'll see.
The UK, naturally, as we've kind of touched upon here, it's going to be a bit of a topic for us today here. At shows like this or in the industry, there's a lot of excitement about the faster growing markets, like Brazil, Latin America in general. But would you agree with, as kind of a personal assessment of mine, that everything that happens in the UK really is just as important to focus on, because really as one of the more mature markets, it kind of sets the tone. So anything that happens regulatory and even just the life cycle of the market, the world is effectively going to look to the UK and kind of learn from, in that sense.
I think it has in the past. Whether it does in the future is another question. There's certain things that have been introduced to the UK market that have worked. There's no doubt about that. I think we protect players better than any other market or territory worldwide. So that's a positive. But there's also some various things that haven't worked. And I think Tim Miller from the UK Gambling Commission, he had a speech to the peers of gambling reform earlier this month, and he said they're going to have to evaluate the different regulation that they've brought in. That's a positive, because if you constantly creep with regulation, the market can become pretty unattractive to operators. So you see new territories looking for competition, looking to get market share from a worldwide gaming audience, and that's why Brazil, for example, could be thriving today, and others that you mentioned. So the UK needs to maintain that competitiveness, not only in regulation, but also in business in general. If it wants to stay on the forefront and be leading the conversation, there are various other territories with bigger populations, better economies than we've got. So it's all about staying relevant and keeping that competitive growth going.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Tim Miller. He's been a guest on the Huddle a couple of times before. There's definitely been an increased dialogue with the Gambling Commission between the regulator and the industry, and I think since kind of Kwiff started, as you said, 2017, it's probably coincided well in terms of that timeline, because the regulator was a lot less communicative with the industry in the past. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think so, and we've seen that as an operator. The dialogue, certainly in assessments and various other things, that we had a great result out of our, expected result actually, out of our assessment last year. So we are compliant, as they say. They never go beyond that. So that's a sort of rubber stamp on everything we do and how we protect players. But that's important going forward. And I understand the historic nature of it. I think actually I'd counter that by saying setting up a company in the UK in a highly regulated market as a startup, building your own technology, is probably not what I would do today. But we've been able to navigate that. But it's taken a lot of investment, a lot of growth, and a lot of years to get to where we are today. So that's harder than ever before for someone in the UK. But that is a good positive thing that the Commission are doing. So I applaud them for that. And it's good to see that they're going to be evaluating all of the different regulation that they introduce, assessing whether it's had an impact, a positive one, a negative one, and they can change on that. Just like they ask us as operators to identify, act, and evaluate. Those are the 3 words they use in interactions with customers. So it's good. Bit of tit for tat is helpful, I think.
Yeah. The regulator is one side. On the other side, you have legislators and the UK government. Tax is the talk of the town. When I say talk of the town, it's something that not a lot of people necessarily want to discuss with us. But
Why is that?
I think not just in the UK, globally, people want to be careful what they say in case it influences a decision either way. And we've seen kind of in India at the moment, they're proposing a tax rise, but also there's been a very sudden ban on real money gaming, which to all intents and purposes, we had someone here yesterday speaking with us, was very sudden, a lack of industry consultation. But taxes in the UK, if they do go up, what is, and we don't know how much to, but what is beyond the obvious, what are the practical implications for a brand like Kwiff, bearing in mind that, as you say, you're not necessarily in the top 10 yet?
Yeah. Well, first off, a few things there. I think it's better to, like we do now with the Commission a bit more, have a bit more of an open discussion about that. That's always helpful. Otherwise, it feels like a sort of a remit from the government and a one-sided one of that. So I'm pleased there's the consultation going on. I'm pleased that the horse racing industry, for example, has got together pretty uniquely and unified together to sort of push back on that. But it's not just horse racing where the impacts will be felt. They'd be felt throughout different sports in the UK, different casino providers, different platforms, and different employers within the UK. There have already been tax rises in the UK in the last 12 months. We've got the levy, mandatory levy now, that's 1.1% for charities. That I think is a good thing, but it means that the tax rate isn't 15% and 21%, it's 16.1 and 22.1. So that's different. There's different affordability checks, slot limit things. These all change the nature of operating in the UK. Even employer national insurance rises, that affects who we employ and where we employ them. So you've got to look at the environment and say, well, why should taxes go up? That's probably where I would position that argument and talk about it. And that's not always clear, I don't think, to governments. You only have to look at the share prices of listed companies that operate majority-wise in the UK, your Entains, of Oaks, etc. They have not risen. They've declined in the last 5 years, or they've held steady. So that's not growth, as I look at it, or it's not a public view of growth. Whereas you look to other gaming companies internationally, and they have. So if you're an operator today that operates in the UK but have a global footprint, you're going to transfer your marketing budget elsewhere. What does that mean for the UK government in terms of rising taxes? There's less of a pot to pull taxes from. And that impact needs to be assessed and understood. And I think the gambling industry should be very open about what money we make or don't, the investment we have to take, and all of the different layers of costs we have along that journey. From taking from anything from GGR all the way down to what we actually cash in the bank at the end of the day. The margins are incredibly tight, and you've seen lots of gambling operators go bust in the UK trying to set up in the last 5 years. And I think if you increase taxes, depending on how you do it, you'll see more and more and more, and that pivot of attention towards other territories. So there are possibly different ways to do it in the UK from the government. So I think they should be open to that.
I think you made a very good point in terms of the what money people actually make and being open about it, because I think when it comes to the support for tax rises, what some of these reports often say is the gambling industry made this much money, this much profits, therefore they should be taxed higher. But that's not necessarily a reasonable basis, because on that basis you could tax any industry and just say, well, you've made money, therefore your taxes go up.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. And again, there's a few things. If you think gambling should be banned, okay, That's one argument. We can have that discussion. I'm not sure that's an argument being put forward by the government. I think they don't believe that. Maybe some do. Maybe The Guardian does. Maybe the different left-wing think tanks do. But that's one viewpoint. I think if you took gambling away from the UK public, that would be a problem. And then the taxes are off the table as well. But also you drive the black market a bit more. So that's one element. So if we're discounting that and we're saying people should be allowed to have a bet, okay, what kind of industry do you want there? You want to protect players. Well, we're hearing that the Commission are now doing that more through their reports from other operators. So the operators are doing it at the remit of the Gambling Commission and also off our own back. We want to protect our players. We don't want harmful gambling to happen within our platform. So that's unhealthy for business. We want to retain loyal customers and make sure that their spend is affordable. So if that's happening within the regulated market, if you want more money that's leaking to the black market, close that down, like other territories do. There's reports of anything between 5 and 10% of what that would be. Well, that's 10% more revenue coming into the government. If you can do that, we're maybe 2 to 5 years behind other territories with that to make sure the channelization is good. That will make the market more attractive to a regulated operator coming in. So you might get more license applications as well. That's more money coming in to the industry. So if you close down the black market and you give a tax rate that is effective and allows growth and competition, you'll see investment coming into the territory as well. That's going to bring more money. That's going to bring more taxes, be it in corporation tax, in employer national insurance, employee national insurance, PAYE, all of those different things. That's actually going to get the tax system moving with growth in a protected environment for customers, rather than just making it incredibly unattractive to open up in the UK or operate here.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, because my next question was going to be how can the industry perhaps better lobby and not necessarily lobby, but in terms of reasoning, vary up the counter argument, because the black market counter argument is the main one put forward. But quite frankly, as a journalist, I hear the same argument often, not over and over. And the thing is, it's a legitimate argument. It is a legitimate, as you mentioned, people going to the black market. But what I think regulators and legislators, and this is just a personal opinion, what they might be hearing that over and over, and they might be saying, we've heard this one, we can treat it as a bit of a red herring. Do you think there's other points that could be made stronger? I mean, a little bit like what you just said in terms of, driving growth more effectively, to perhaps put this industry in a better position, and as you said, so that dialogue isn't so one-sided.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Don't get me wrong. I think the black market is a problem, and actually, there's a CEO briefing that the Andrew Rhodes, the CEO of the Gambling Commission, gives to other CEOs in the industry of operators, B2B providers, and so forth every year. That's coming up in November. I think 2 to 3 years ago, he denied the impact of the black market. So the industry's response within the UK has been, actually, no, we see this every day. We see it on bank statements from different customers sending us them for due diligence and compliance reasons, that these operators are appearing on those bank statements. So we know it's happening, be it via Curaçao or elsewhere. And you can see it in Tim Miller's speech earlier this month. The number of websites, I think it was 46,000 URLs they've blocked or reported, and it was nearly 500 websites that they've reported and got taken down by Google. Well, that number has gone up a lot since I saw those numbers from the CEO of the Gambling Commission last November. So why is it rising? What is the impact of that? But the positive side is that they might be getting a bit of a handle on it and recognizing the problem. So if they're recognizing the problem and their deal is to close that end of the market, great. Well done. Thank you for doing that, because you were denying it a couple of years ago. Yeah. So that's one element. But let's put the black market aside, and let's assume that it's a recognized problem and it's going to be dealt with. Might take a few years. There's always going to be a bit of leakage. You look at other territories, there might be 50% channelization in Germany, but there's 90% in Denmark. Everyone has a different range, and I'm saying it's 5 to 10% in the UK, let's just say. Let's put that aside. The economic impacts of, are the government pro-business or are they anti-business? Gambling is a business. Of course, shareholders of gambling companies want to make money. That's the remit. It's a long journey to do that in the UK at present. So you can either stimulate growth, you can take a bigger piece of the pie with taxes, that will reduce the size of the market, or you can work together and try and find a hybrid in between that suits all parties, and look at different things. There's also different tiers of licensing you could have within the UK today. I think there's a public perception that, listen, no one's going to feel sorry for a gambling company, right? Yeah, the very nature of gambling with an operator is adversarial. So no one's going to feel sorry. They don't think it's going to go away. But I think if you said to a member of the public, well, there are no operators to bet with in the UK because it's unattractive, they might feel a bit of sympathy, not for the industry, but they would like to place a bet every Saturday in a responsible way, of course. So how do we get to that stage where we get growth in the industry, we appreciate it, and maybe the public perception of gambling operators is they're killing it because of those public reports and the profits that they make, and also the fact that there's a number of different operators appearing on shirt sponsors every week that don't actually operate really in the UK. They have a license, but they're not interested in the UK market. They don't pay in to the taxes for the UK market, but they use different shirts throughout the Premier League, Championship, and whatever in order to promote their brand internationally where they make all the profits. So maybe there's a tiered licensing structure that says, actually, if you want to sponsor a shirt in the Premier League, a UK league, maybe you have to have a certain commitment on costs of tax revenue that you generate for the government, for the industry, and then you're allowed to do that. Or there's a tier of licensing where there's a bank guarantee or whatever it might be, or a commitment on that, to say you're committed to this market rather than you're just utilizing it to advertise elsewhere because the Premier League is enormous worldwide. So there's lots of different ways, and there's probably different blended tax rates and various other things. My big concern is that they're trying to simplify the tax rate in a very, very complicated industries with different margins, rev shares, and various other things, different tech stack costs, different international bases and things, and it might not be as simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are some really interesting ideas. We've talked about some heavy-hitting topics, a very supercharged conversation, if you will. So,
yeah,
so I appreciate appreciate all your analysis. But final question, looking ahead, I want to go to something maybe less heavy-hitting, but certainly important for you. The future plans kind of coming up to Q4, but beyond 2025, what can we expect coming up next from Kwiff?
Well, that's a bit more exciting, I think. Yeah, we're still highly committed to the UK, want to be. We'll see what happens in a couple of months and beyond in the UK market. But we're pressing on with our plans. We're going to supercharge more throughout the product. Well, Bet Builder product's going to get a lot bigger on the sportsbook. Supercharging's coming to the casino as well. So our tech stack is going to get way better, improve UX and UI for customers, but the supercharge will grow.
Yeah, well, Charles, thanks very much for your time. As I say, really interesting. Really appreciate that, as you say, an open dialogue that we can talk about a few things that, as you say, perhaps maybe a public listed operator just can't talk about.
Sure. Advantage of a private company.
Absolutely. But yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Cheers, Tim. Thanks very much.